Thank you everyone for joining us for our webinar, Building Telecommunications Coverage Maps with Mapbox. I'm Greg Banneker. I'm a product marketer here at Mapbox. So for today's webinar, we do want to introduce you to the Mapbox team, who's going to be talking through building coverage maps, why we need coverage maps, why Mapbox is a solid solution for that. And then we're also going to talk about or give you a demo of how you can actually build a coverage map with Mapbox, and then even dive into some code so you can see on the back end how that works and some things you want to account for when you're building your own coverage maps. Then we'll wrap up with a Q&A. And let me introduce the presenters before we get started. First, we're going to hear from Kieran McCann, who is an account manager and telecommunications go-to-market expert here at Mapbox. And you can see Kieran's email address there as well. We also have Megan White, who's a solutions architect at Mapbox and also manages solution architecture for our telecommunication customers. Same with Peter, solutions architect, also manages telecommunications. We are a team and we work together, but just generally speaking, Megan may work on the North America side, whereas Peter might work on the EMEA side, or Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And then we do also have a team in Japan who handles Asia and the Pacific. They just weren't able to make this webinar today. So with that said, I'm going to pass it off to Kieran, who is going to do a little introduction to coverage maps for us. Go ahead, Kieran.
Yeah, sure. Hey, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk to everyone. So, this first slide really kind of speaks to every trend line for, connectivity and the need for a connected world going up and to the right. More devices than ever are coming online. And they're not just kind of your regular everyday devices. They have to be connected to internet for services in order to be functional. So when we talk about, the smartphone market, that's just continuing to rise. More and more people are getting smartphones around the world in markets where maybe there weren't, networks before. There's a lot of stats here, 43% rise in the demand for VR. More and more Americans are working from home. The need for these data demands is rising and rising, which is putting some strain on existing networks and also creating a huge demand for next gen services and higher download speeds than ever before. One interesting thing about the work from home shift is that a lot of these places where you had folks going into the office, there would be demand in the office space day in and day out, and that was expected. But now there's this huge demand where you're looking at residential suburbs where they weren't anticipating folks being around all day working from home. So there's shifts that are happening that are really important to understand for telcos and carriers and different service providers. And anticipating that and communicating that to their customers is a big part of the coverage map experience and why that's important. So yeah, a lot of stats, everything's going up to the right, and we've got to anticipate how to communicate those needs. We're going to talk about coverage maps today, and really what's important about coverage maps is that it's sort of the first impression that a carrier or a service provider has for their customer base, whether that be prospective customers or customers that have been using their services for a long time. Coverage maps change over time, and it's important to be able to communicate the investments that are being made on these different platforms and these different networks, and communicate when something's going well, like you've got new service or faster service in an area, or maybe importantly as well, communicating when something's going wrong. So that's when there's an outage or there's some sort of issue. So they're basically the front line of communication to the customer base, and they're important for bringing customers on, but also communicating through the brand. Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about some of the why coverage maps are important, but really there's two main areas where this comes into play, and I just want to reemphasize this. It is the first impression for your brand, and that applies to the brand itself. Like if your map looks like everyone else's map, then it's not really distinguished. You don't necessarily know you're on carrier A or carrier B website if you're looking at a generic map. So it's one place where you can kind of immediately have your stamp on the way that this looks and feels. So with Mapbox Studio and with some of the Mapbox tools, we really pride ourselves on being able to allow you to control every aspect of the map and customize the coloring, customize the way that you're displaying your data, customizing fonts, and you can even throw your store locations on the coverage map. There's really no limit to what you can do when it comes to the styling and controlling your brand. So it's a marketing asset and a tool for communicating with customers. And marketing teams love this because you can take the coverage map that you have on your site, it's interactive, and you can take that as an asset in a kind of static view and use that on social media. You can use that for TV spots. You can use that on billboards. So you're using the same coverage experience from end to end across your marketing, across your organization, and it creates a cohesive feel to your brand. But more importantly, I think that this is a new customer acquisition tool. One of the things that customers immediately do when they're looking at switching carriers or signing up for a new service is, do I have coverage at my house? Do I have coverage in my work? Do I have coverage at my vacation spot that I go to every year? I want to know, am I going to be able to use the services that I need every day with this new carrier or with this new network? So people go to a coverage map and they want to know these different locations, how the services perform and what they can expect. And having that be proactively communicated through a map or through an experience like a coverage map is really important to the make or break between somebody choosing carrier A, carrier B, or carrier C. And it has to be performant and it can't be laggy, because if, in 2024, if you're on a website and it takes more than like a second to load, or interacting with an experience takes more than a few seconds to load, people are going to leave. So we want to make that as fast as possible, and we'll show some of the performance that you'll see where you're not going to have any lags. It's going to be smooth experience. So next slide. Yep. So we already touched on this a little bit as well, but yeah, the Mapbox differentiator in the coverage map space really comes down to some of those points we've talked about. Data processing is going to be faster than what you're likely using today. So there's not going to be a bottleneck of waiting hours and hours and hours for these map tiles to be processed and hosted on the map. The renderer itself is best in market. So if you're talking about loading this up on a mobile experience or loading this up on the web, you're not going to have a laggy experience where, the map itself is taking a while to load when it's on the user's whatever medium they're interacting with it. And that's really important because, like I said before, people will leave the site or they will go to another competitor if the coverage map experience is not optimal. So we want to make sure we can help you with that. And then the styling, we already touched on that. You'll be able to have the same map on all of your platforms. So Mapbox has mobile and web APIs and SDKs. So you can create one style and have that, carry over to all of your different places where you interact with your customers, whether that be a mobile app or the web. And then, yeah, the geocoder is really important for helping folks identify where they're actually looking for their address or where they're going to their house. That's the first thing people do is any map, they go type in their address and look at their house. So you need to make sure that that's accurate, or else folks will not be able to get to their kind of first take of what they're doing. And yeah, you don't have to worry about hosting these things yourselves. We're able to host those tiles on mapbox.com. We're able to help you style all those things on our cloud services. So you don't have to worry about the cost of maintaining these things if you're doing this, kind of DIY. And it's really easy to get started. All you have to do is sign up for a Mapbox account and then follow some of the, guides that we're going to kind of walk through today. So, and our team's happy to help you get started if you're kind of looking for where to get going. So we're going to touch on this in a lot more detail with Megan and Peter, but this is sort of an overview of what you can expect from, the basic coverage map solution. So first, you're taking your raw inputs. Usually this is files that you're getting from upstream from your network team. You're taking this data, maybe it's in various formats. We can help you kind of work through those formats to get it into something that's compatible with MTS. We have lots of docs on how to do that. But you're taking your data and then uploading that coverage data to Mapbox tiling service. So that's taking the raw data and putting it into a tiled format, which is one of the things that really boosts the performance of, lots of data on, over a wide geographic area. So you're tiling it up, and that kind of breaks it up into more digestible chunks for the renderer, and then that's kind of boosting the performance. Once you have that tile set, you're able to take that, it's in your Mapbox account. You can go in and kind of create the styles and basically control the way that that data is displayed. That's where you go into Mapbox Studio, which again is sort of like Photoshop for maps. You can control every aspect of the layering, the fonts, the colors. That's where you start to put your brand spin on the data, and you can control the way that looks. So we'll show some examples of coverage maps later, but you'll see, you can kind of choose whatever color schemes you want, the way to represent that. Once you've styled up your map, you're going to add the functionality. That's where you're adding the geocoder, tile query API, which allows you to click and point on a particular area and get the address information or get the metadata in the tile set. So you could see 5G coverage, 4G coverage, 3G. You'll get a read for, maybe you could stream Netflix to this location. Maybe you could do a Zoom call, or maybe it's, a lower connectivity area where, hey, you're going to be limited to, certain, web pages, but you don't want to stream, right? So those are all important aspects that you can add functionality to. So you're kind of getting the base style, the data, and then you're adding that interactivity, whether that be search or the point on click, and you can choose whether you want that to be a static map or an interactive map. Once you've got that all ready, you publish it, and then you can embed that on your page, and throw it on your landing page or wherever you have your coverage map, and then users can start interacting with that right away. So it is a pretty streamlined process, and we've helped a number of customers do this, deploy this at scale. So that's kind of the gist of the solution. So we'll go into some more detail later. Cool. Greg, do you want to go to the next slide? So here's a quick couple of examples of some big customers that are using Mapbox coverage maps today. You can go check out these on their websites, but most notably Verizon, T-Mobile, they have solutions that are rolling out our coverage map using all of those functionality pieces that we talked about earlier. Obviously, T-Mobile is going to have the T-Mobile brand magenta. That's a big part of their identity across the board. So of course the coverage map's got to, match that style, match that branding. Verizon as well, it's very distinct to their brand colors and focused on the way that Verizon presents itself across the board at the company, right? And then these distinct kind of smaller carriers under the T-Mobile umbrella, like Metro and Mint Mobile, they also have their own styling and brand associated with them, because they do want to control the differences between the brands under the umbrella of T-Mobile. So you can kind of see a big picture of this here. And yeah, I encourage you to go check out those sites if you want to see how that performs in production and at scale in the wild. So yeah, next.
And before we move to the next slide, I wanted to just quickly point out that while you can edit your data, you also have the ability to edit some of our data later. So if you wanted, looking at these screenshots, if you wanted to change like the color of the water, you have the ability to do that with Mapbox. So it's not only your data that you can change, but also the underlying base map. So you can really fine tune it to make it yours. So next slide, Greg.
Exactly. Yeah, and these are sort of tame compared to some of the Mapbox styles that are out there. There's some crazy examples. I'd encourage you to go to our website and check out some of the styles that are on our maps page, where you can see cartoonish maps. People can edit all sorts of things and create really interesting styles. So maybe you don't want to do that for your coverage map, but you can control kind of the brand focused items that you'd want to change. So this map here is actually a great example. This is one that we built ourselves using some open data, but it's representative of what you could do for any country around the world. If you've got the data, you can create a coverage map. So what's interesting about this kind of demonstration here is that we're actually showing that tile query functionality. So when you're clicking on a particular cell here, you're able to query the information in the tile set. And, basically this is looking at density of cell towers, but you can see okay, the white has the highest density. You're going to see excellent coverage if you click there. You're getting the address of particularly where you picked. And this is pretty zoomed out, but you'd be able to click on an individual house. You'd be able to click on, a business and get the address and the data behind the tile set. So this is sort of simple, just good, excellent, or bad, but you'd be able to embed your specific data, which would show 5G, 4G, kind of giving like, what the user can expect behind that service. And it's all just point and click. So if a user doesn't necessarily know the address of their workplace, or maybe they don't know the address of a vacation spot they're going to, they can go find that on the map, zoom in, and then click. So that's an alternative way for people to discover and search, rather than having to know the specific address, which I don't know if I know the specific address of a particular place I'm going for vacation, right? So you can have that flexibility. But yeah, I think the tile query is a really important aspect of the solution. This is a vector coverage map. So there's two form factors of data you can use. Traditionally, vector has sort of been dominant at Mapbox, but we do have a raster capability that has come online, and we're really excited to bring this forward because we know the telco data that folks are working with is often in raster format already. And then there's some conversion work that has to be done to get it into a vector format, which is then generalized, and the geometries are sort of generalized as a trade-off to put it into vector. So we're building out raster capabilities, and that's what we're going to showcase today with Megan and Peter. But raster is not, replacing vector. Vector is not replacing raster. We know that there's use cases where raster is the preference, and we want to provide that capability as well. And it lends itself really well to coverage data because, raster data or raster formats are better for like continuous fields. So there's not going to be a hard line where you go from 5G to 4G. It's going to be a diffused kind of border there that's not like distinct, right? So we're going to have the ability to show that with, raster formats. And you can see here, it's a little bit more detailed than what you would see with a kind of hard line cell by cell division, or even if you have like the distinct geometries. This is more representative of what's really going on with the network and gives a bit more granularity to what you can display. So yeah, that's a good kind of segue into some of the work that Megan and Peter are going to share. But if you've got any questions about what we covered and at the why of Mapbox or what Mapbox can do, we can cover some of that in the Q&A, and we're happy to touch on that at the end. So with that, I'll pass the mic over to Megan.
Yeah, great. So with this web application, we want to demonstrate just how easy it is to publish new versions of coverage maps, since we know that coverage is not static. So under the hood, this application is making API calls to our raster tiling product. And these are requests that you can make in your own applications or backend systems. And with these requests, we're taking coverage data and we're transforming it into a tile set. If you've never heard of a tile set, at the most basic level, you can think of it as another data layer in your map. And what a tile set consists of is geographic data that's been chopped up or tiled in uniform grids for each zoom level that the data should be visible at. This ensures that maps load efficiently and performantly, even with a lot of data, no matter how much you're zooming in, zooming out, and panning around, is what makes these coverage maps really performant. And so to summarize, what we're going to be showing you in what we're doing with this application is the 4 API requests that are creating a tile set from your coverage data, and then we're adding that as a layer to the map. So these are the 4 API requests, the raster product that we're making. The first one takes the coverage file and uploads it as a data source to the server. The second request uploads an accompanying configuration file for creating the tile set. We call this config file a recipe, and it includes, for example, a URL that points to the source data that was just uploaded to Mapbox with the first API call. And the recipe doesn't just do that. The recipe can also have other rules that you might want applied to the tile set during its creation. And the third one will tell our pipeline to start publishing or processing the tile set according to the uploaded source data and recipe. And then the last one, the last API call can be used to check the status of the processing job periodically and let you know where it's at. And with that, we can go to the demo. If you could press the next slide. All right, so we can go ahead and upload the coverage data to the raster MTS server by using this upload file button. And the bar below is tracking the progress of each of the API requests that I've described. This file, the GeoTIFF file, is about 11 megabytes, so it's going to upload quickly. And we've seen that GeoTIFFs are a pretty standard file format for coverage data, and we're assuming that in this demo. And as soon as the raster data and recipe get uploaded to the server, the tiling process gets started, which we see here as processing. The recipe that we uploaded for this tile set uses the default configurations, except we chose values for the minimum and maximum zoom levels so that the data only appears between zoom levels 4 and 10. So with these values specified in the recipe, the tile set processor knows to generate tiles for the coverage data only in between these zoom levels, just to power the recipe. And when the tile set publishing is complete, the coverage will be immediately displayed in the browser map. But of course, the time to process the tile set will depend on the size of the file and on the tile set configurations that were set. Because with the recipe, you can also set rules like filtering or resampling of the data. So the final map is created with the tile set and the style. The style is a JSON file that tells our SDKs, our Mapbox SDKs, how to draw the map. And what I'm showing you here is how you can go through the different colors quickly using GLJS. And since we use raster MTS to encode the data in the tile set, we can have the original raster values, the raster pixels on the front end. And this is what makes it possible to change the visualization of the pixels quickly in the browser on the fly with GLJS. And we can do that without needing to fetch another raster from the backend. So yeah, here you can see how easy it is to match brand colors to your coverage data. And it was tiled. As I was zooming out, you could see it was tiled only to the zoom levels that we specified in the recipe. And once it's created, it can be used in the web, like in this demo, or in mobile applications, or it can be integrated with other applications, which I think someone had a question about in the comments, but it can be built with applications also for navigation, weather, travel sites, city maps. But Peter's going to show us specifically how it can be used with other Mapbox products for telco. So that concludes the demo portion. I can hand it off to Peter.
Well, Peter's pulling that up. I think one thing that's really exciting about the raster capability here is that you can control the way that you're displaying that data at runtime on the client side. So that allows for a lot of user control of how the data is represented. So you don't have to have one defined way of styling and representing the data ahead of time, which is sometimes, a trade-off that you have to make when you're processing the data. You got to say, okay, this is exactly how this is going to look when it's displayed. You have a lot more flexibility to actually control the way that data is displayed after the fact, because you're able to do some modifications to the way it's represented at runtime in the browser. So that kind of opens the door for a lot of different user interactions where you can kind of choose the coloring, right? But you can also change the way maybe you're representing the pixel data for the raster. So you can change it to display 5G versus 4G and filter that same data set, but everything's stored in the pixel. So you can kind of choose the way that pixel is represented depending on what your data is embedded, right? So it's pretty interesting, and I think it opens up a lot of new form factors for how you could create coverage and display this data. And you could do like time series, you could do different ways of representing that. So we're interested to see what customers are doing with this, because we've seen some interesting stuff already, but would love to hear from you what kind of piques your interest for this new use case here. So yeah, Peter.
Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. So this is basically what you have seen in the previous section was how you can upload the data and how you can tile it on our servers. Now, I want to show you how you can actually use the data to create your own coverage map. So this is an example how your coverage map may look like. This is stretched to the entire page, but you can have it as a small component on your own website. And what I want to show you is the code behind this. So if I go to here, it's really just a couple of lines of code. The script itself is like 40 lines, and I'll just explain what's going on here. So first, basically, it's one HTML file. First, here we load the Mapbox GLJS JavaScript library that will do all the magic with the map. Then we apply some styling. So here we are stretching it to the entire page, but of course you can choose what you want to do with this. And in the HTML, we have really just one element, one div called map, and the entire map will live inside this div. And here is where the script starts. So first here we have a Mapbox token. Mapbox token is sort of your password to anything Mapbox. So you can when you create an account with Mapbox, you will get a first default first default token, but you can create new tokens, you can rotate tokens, you can create temporary ones, or maybe specify what websites they can be used on, and they basically create your access to Mapbox services. Here I'm loading the token into the code. And then this is creating the map. We can give it some options. Here I'm saying that the container for the map is this div, that the style for the base map is standard. So it's our standard base map. That the center, since this is coverage for France, is somewhere in the middle of France, giving it the latitude and the longitude, and zoom level is 5 so that we can see the entire country. So that's for the base map. And when the base map loads, we sort of implement this listener here. When the map loads, I can load also our the data, basically the tile set that we created that you've seen in the previous step. So this is the URL to that tile set. So we are creating source, and here we are creating a layer on top of the base map. What's interesting here is that, as we've already mentioned, the raster is really not just some kind of red image. It's really representing the original value. So in this raster, we have only, just to demonstrate the idea, we have only 0 and 1. 0 means no coverage, 1 means the area is covered. And here we can color it on the front end by using these values. So 0 is transparent. We have RGBA colors. And value 1 is half transparent red. So that's how it looks like here in the map. I can change this. So if I decided my brand is not red but is blue, I can simply change the color here, and then go here and refresh, and my coverage is suddenly blue. This is a very simple example. I can have more values than just 0, 1. I can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for 2G, 4G, 3G, whatever I want to show. It all loads in one raster, and I can color it here on the front end dynamically like this. Then last piece of the map I want to show is this search box component, and that's this here at the corner. Mapbox is not just coverage map; it's more services. This is one that you can also use in your maps. Here I can search for anything I want. It will give me some options here. When I click, it will zoom into that location and sort of display the map there. So I can give the search box some options as well. So here, of course, it makes sense to limit the search results to France. So we set country to France, and language would be French. I can also limit this to, now I can search entire addresses, but I can, just I'm commenting this, I would be limiting this to that the search results would be only cities. In some use cases, that might be more convenient. So these couple of lines of code is all you need for searching addresses. So that's all for this coverage map. But what I want to show you next is, and Megan sort of talked a little bit about that, is that you can change the base map. Because yeah, you can sort of brand the coverage, but you can also brand the underlying base map. So for that, you would use a web application that we call Mapbox Studio. That comes with every Mapbox account. Once you create an account, even free account, you have access to this studio. And here I can create new style. We have plenty of templates that you can use. I will choose this one because I like the way you can use this for displaying data on top of this, because it's quite neutral. So I will go ahead and customize this basic style. Can give it a more meaningful name here. My coverage demo. And then, just for sake of this demo, there are many layers here, many features that you can change the color of, or the font of, or icons. But what I will do here, I'll just change the color of water. Water is usually blue, so let's give it blue color. And then I need to publish this. So I'll go here and publish the style. You can see difference between the previous and current one. Once it's published, I can share the style, and here I get the style URL. So I'll copy this, and then I'll go to my code, and here, instead of the standard style, I can use my own style. And I go back here, refresh.
Explain what Peter was doing there. So basically, like we said before, there's the style itself, which you can control the actual data that you're bringing to the map. So you can bring your own data, but you can also control all the aspects behind the scenes, where that's basically the Mapbox base map that you're changing. So, what Peter was doing there was taking kind of our regular standard base map and then changing some of the background to like some of our default styles that are available. So you kind of saw like a muted monochrome background, which is good for displaying data. You can go and tweak the way that anything looks on that default template and then kind of run with that. And then you're putting your data on top of that. All you have to do is change the style URL, which is controlling the way that all that's represented in GLJS. So all of that's really easy to do in Studio without any code. And then you can go ahead and swap that in your implementation. And then that's going to control the way that the style's published on the coverage map. So yeah, that's pretty important when it comes to the styling and branding, right? So you want to be able to control those aspects rather than just have it be your data on top of a generic map that you can't control, which is what the experience has been with some of the other services that are on the market today. So Mapbox is all about full end-to-end control of the way that the map displays and the way that you're styling it. So
yeah, maybe we could say Peter had a brief internet outage, and that could have potentially shown up a telecommunications outage map, which is something else that Mapbox could help with.
What I wanted to show is the final map. I don't know if you've seen this. I'll try to share that again. So basically now I have the base map styled the way I want. And that was the end of what I wanted to say. So hopefully you can see it now.
Yes, we see it. That's awesome.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the wrap up of our presentation portion of this. So I do want to encourage you, if you have particular questions about anything we presented on or just anything else in general, please pop those into the Q&A function. I do have some already, so we will get to those. The Q&A is right at the bottom of your screen, so you should just be able to click that and type in any questions you have. I also want to say that we have a QR code up here. So if you are not already signed up for a Mapbox account, but you do want to get started, maybe experimenting or building with Mapbox, you can just scan that QR code. It'll bring you to our page to sign up. Signing up is super simple. And then when you do that, you will get what Peter was talking about. You do get access to a token, and you can really start building a map with Mapbox. Signing up is free, and we also have simple free tier accounts. So like you're not going to get charged any money to just get started and experimenting and working and trying to build your coverage map. So please scan that QR code and you can get started. And with that, I did want to direct our first couple questions to Megan, but Megan, feel free to pass it on too if you need to. But is there a possibility to have a live coverage map? So the map updates in the case of a wireless internet provider. For instance, can you integrate that live coverage map with a mobile app and subscribers are able to just get an instant update on hotspots?
Yes. So as we've mentioned before, you're able to include these maps in any of our other products, including our mobile SDKs for Android, for iOS. So if you were to have a native mobile application, you could include your own style in there and then have your data update at a frequency of less than 5 minutes if you wanted to tile the data and show it to your users. And we're talking live coverage data or outages. And so that's about the SLA that we're working with. We have a lot of weather customers that are experimenting with raster MTS for this exact use case. So it would be similar in this case. So Peter, I don't know if you want to add, or Kieran, if you want to add any color to that, but it definitely is possible.
Yeah, essentially, it would be near real time, right? It would be, the only bottleneck would be the actual processing of the tile set, and that can be done in SLAs as low as 5 minutes. So you could have that, hotspot, sharing kind of updated on a regular cadence. Also, if you have just the locations of the hotspots and you want to just share availability or not available, and you wanted to not necessarily have a coverage map, but you wanted to display the metadata attached to those points saying like, this is the speed, this is that. So you could do it point by point of where the hotspots are, and that could be done as well. So it just depends on what you're actually trying to build out, but we'd be happy to talk to your team about how to approach that.
Thank you, team. And what is the ease of integration with other tools? So, for example, pre-seam. I'm not familiar with pre-seam. Maybe someone here is, but in terms of presenting the signal quality in a determined area.
I can jump in here. I think, Mapbox is compatible with lots of different services that you'd be looking to leverage there. So yeah, I'm not particularly read up on pre-seam myself either, but we work with the carriers, and then oftentimes we're working with other third-party players in the space. If you have the data, you can create the map, and then that can be shared with other providers if you've got the style and the data tile set that you want to share. We've seen some partners like work with MVMOs to basically share a style that they've created and share that to another provider. The other thing is, if you're trying to get data from a third party, that's something that we see a lot of customers doing as well. So like maybe you're getting a coverage data set from a partner like Preseam, or I'm not sure what they're providing. You'd be able to bring that data in and bring that to your map experience as well. So we see a lot of cross collaboration in the space between the big carriers, ISPs, smaller players. And I think that's one of the things that's beneficial about Mapbox is that if you're creating this in kind of a common format and you have the data, then you can get that on the map. So I'm not sure if that answers the question directly, but typically the way we're built, it's compatible with other services as well.
Maybe I can also try to answer. I'm now connected via mobile network, so hopefully I'll have better connection. So the integration is really, I would say it's easy. What you have seen, what Megan showed is really for API calls. So you would typically do these API calls backend whenever you have new data from whatever system you have. You would just send the data through one API call and then continue from there. And in 1 or 2 minutes, you can have the data live because the coverage map is already built. The tile set is already linked to that to that map, so it really can be updated every couple of minutes.
And I do want to add one more thing, that if platforms like FreeSeam are used for internal tooling, we do have customers that are using Mapbox for internal tooling, and we have a couple of options when you're working with sensitive data that might not be able, to reach the internet or be exposed externally. I won't go into them now, but that's something that you could definitely talk about with our teams if you wanted to use Mapbox for some internal platforms.
Awesome. And we do have more questions coming in, so I'm going to keep rolling. So Peter, we do have an attendee who actually wants to see your code. They suggested bringing it back up and taking a screenshot, but I'm wondering, is there a better way? I mean, we do have email addresses, so is there a better way to share the code?
I can definitely share the code. It's really just a template that you can definitely use to create your own coverage maps. So if you, I think you will get our emails somewhere throughout the presentation. So you can send me an email, or we can distribute the code even to wider audience. I can definitely show that now, but the webinar is also recorded, so you can always go back and check that.
All right.
With the explanation.
Why don't we, you know what? The heck with it. Why don't we, Peter, why don't you share it? If can you do that?
Okay.
Your mobile device, and let's leave that up for a minute while we answer a couple other questions. We'll take it down. I'll reshare this slide.
I'm more lucky now. It's
Yep.
my connection.
All right. While Peter is doing that, next question. Can coverage maps also include altitude information? We are talking about coverage for drone-driven businesses where a signal for BLVOS flights is needed.
Yeah. So yes, we provide also elevations, like our own digital elevation model. But for drones, you would probably want to have your own data, more precise digital elevation model in that area where you are working on, including height of vegetation and these kind of things, which can be also ingested as tile set. So basically, now we were showing tile set that has only values 0 and 1, but you can have as many as you want. So those can be not coverage values, but they can be elevation values.
Also, we work with a number of different drone companies that they're mapping out not just things on the ground, but the airspace and different restrictions and things like that of where the no-fly zones are and where there's safe-to-fly zones. So those values do have like a Z component, like a altitude component to them. You'd be able to, if you have the data, you'd be able to bring it on the map, and we could help represent that in kind of a altitude friendly way, right? So there's the ground elevation, but then there's also ways to style the data and kind of represent the data so that it's in kind of a Z value space as well. So yeah, we've worked with customers in the drone space a lot on some of those challenges. So
All right, thank you. So is it possible to have a coverage map per site? So it seems what the attendee's asking is, can we click on the map and see all possible sites that are providing coverage.
Yeah, I think that would be a use case. Oh, I think that would be a use case for our tile query API where you can click on the map and query your own tile set for within a radius of where you clicked. And you're able to set certain properties so that you return specific features. So if you wanted to query some of your data and then search through that and display certain properties for specific sites, then that's definitely a possibility. Kieran, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, for example, for some of the internal tools we've helped customers with, you would be able to do what Megan just described, where you click on a particular residency, and you can click that point and then pull up the metadata, and it will show connected to Tower A, Tower B, Tower C. And you could say Tower A has this strength, Tower B has this strength, Tower C has this strength. Similarly, if there's sort of like an outage scenario, you could click on a particular point and understand what towers are impacted, where you would expect to see coverage from this tower, but you're no longer seeing that for this residency, or a number of different reported issues. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to interact with the data. And if you've got the data, we can pull that up, and it can be compatible with tower sites. It can be compatible with different services that are going on in the area. You can get information from users where maybe they're reporting issues. So there's lots of ways that you can go about working with the tile query API, which makes it pretty powerful.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan and Kieran. And I'm going to ask one more question that we have. While I'm doing that, Peter, can you stop sharing? I want to put one more slide up. And let's keep it at 2 minutes just so I can wrap it up. Okay, so this person said, we just started building our coverage maps with Mapbox, and they really like the service. What other opportunities are there for telco companies to leverage Mapbox? And maybe what are some examples of some current customers? Like, what are they building?
Yeah, I can tackle this. There's a whole host of services that Mapbox can provide for telcos. I think we talk about coverage maps first and foremost because it is really sort of the most recognizable for a lot of brands, and that's something everyone at the company knows what the coverage map is. So that's one of the reasons why we talk about it. And it is really important to the telcos and carriers and ISPs. Like we mentioned earlier, we do a lot of work with internal network teams as well. So that's a little upstream from the coverage map teams, who are usually web focused and kind of maybe get the inputs that they're bringing onto the map. But we do work with the network planning teams, who are often the ones that are curating that network data. They're putting it together in formats that can be shared internally with different stakeholders, because the coverage map is for customers, but there's internal coverage and network and RF planning tools that it's important for internal stakeholders like business analytics teams, demand planning groups, RF engineers. Like, they all need to be able to understand these maps as well, because the map is a pretty powerful medium for visualizing and communicating what's going on. So we work with those teams. And then I'd say, there's other use cases for customer onboarding experiences, store locators. Those are kind of bread and butter use cases for Mapbox, where you want to throw your stores of where customers can go in and get a service check, or maybe switch carriers. That's something that we take care of all the time. The other place where I think we see a lot of use cases is in the customer service space. So you often have customers that are getting calls from end users who are maybe having an issue with connectivity or having an issue with dropped calls. They'll submit a request to talk to the customer care representative, and then they'll actually be able to have a map pulled up with its Mapbox, and they'll be able to see, hey, this is all the maintenance that's going on. This is a tower that's impacted. They can quickly go to a user's address, type that in, pull up the map, and triage those issues much, much faster than if they didn't have that experience. And that helps resolve, the call resolution time has decreased significantly, because they're able to quickly go through that problem with the customer, and they've got a visualization in front of them that really addresses those problems quickly. So yeah, those are just some of the places that are possible for us to help. And what's really interesting, kind of final thought there, those use cases, although they are distinct and there's different teams working on them, when you have one platform that's addressing those issues, you can share data between those teams. So the coverage map group is producing the customer facing coverage map, but that same data set or the same team that's curating that can share the same styles and the same data sets to the customer care group. So there's consistency in the data so that if a customer is seeing, hey, this is the coverage in my neighborhood on the coverage map that's customer facing, the customer care representative is also using the same data. So you're not getting conflicting information. You're not getting these sort of lags in the way that different groups and stakeholders are viewing data. It's all speaking the same language, so to speak. So that's really important, actually.
Yeah, and a good example of that is, let's say you decide you want to start generating reports for a specific site. Like, you could use our static images API. Like, instead of having an interactive map, you could just grab an image, like a snapshot of your style that you've created, and quickly incorporate it into a report. Like, have a JPEG image, whatever image of your style of a specific area. Plop a point on it. There's flexibility with that API to customize it how you need, but you can also get a static version of these interactive maps that we're talking about that you can use for, you know, your customers or for internal tooling. So yeah, it's pretty easy to like get to have an idea and use our platform for something else that you want to accomplish. So
Internally to organizations, sometimes if there's like a immediate acute pain point issue, like an outage, it can take a while to get the information from the RF teams who have these sort of bespoke tooling, you know, legacy provider tools. If you have that and you know the problem, but you can't get that to, you know, the stakeholders that are going to make a call on what to do, like maybe going all the way up to the C-suite, that's a huge problem. So the lag of information internally can be a huge pain point over time. With Mapbox, you can quickly get the information onto a map tiled, and then you can share that internally to your organization. So we've seen outage situations or outage scenarios where the teams have tiled that data up, got it styled, got it ready to share, and then it's to the C-suite within, you know, within the hour. Whereas in other scenarios in the past, that can take a couple of days to really get a kind of after action report. You don't want an after action report. You want a live action report of what's going on. So that's something we can help with, and that's tooling that Mapbox really powers because it is real time. So, or near real time. So yeah, lots of things we can do. Cool.
yeah, and another interest that has spiked a bit in the telco space is our ability to do geofencing, which is something new that's coming out site from Mapbox. And you know, you can track where with our mobile SDKs. Let's say you had a native app, you could track where the user is within a polygon, and maybe set some trigger to know when they've left that polygon, and you know, send a notification to their device. And this isn't something that's been interesting in the telco space. So Kieran, I know you've been talking to some customers about this, and just wanted to highlight one of our new products that we're pretty excited about that we think can really make an impact in this space.
Yeah, maybe a topic for another webinar. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll chime in. So geofencing is something we have in private beta right now. We're working with select customers on you know, maximizing the use case for their businesses and testing out. But let me use that maybe as a transition, what I have on the screen right now. So I do want to thank Kieran, Megan, and Peter. So knowledgeable, also very good at presenting. So thank you to the three of you. Their email addresses are here. They mean it when they say get in touch. Definitely, please do not hesitate to get in touch if you have questions, ideas, whatever it may be. We just talked about geofencing. If that's something you might be interested, you could get in touch, you know, see what's going on with the beta. I also wanted to just say thank you to all of our attendees. So I know you have to take time out of your day. I know that sometimes time zones, we had really people signing up globally, so time zones don't necessarily work out. So thank you for attending. This was recorded, and we will send a follow-up email once that recording is nice and edited and up on our site. We'll send that out so you can rewatch, pause, take screenshots, whatever you need. Last plug is if you go to if you go to mapbox.com/webinars, we do host webinars fairly regularly. We will set up another telecommunications webinar as well. So you can consistently visit that site, mapbox.com/webinars, to find out what's going on. In particular, next week, we have what we're calling our spring release. So everything from a product perspective that we've been working on since the beginning of the year, new features, new functionality, new products, is going to be included in the spring release. So it'll be a great opportunity for you to find out what we've been working on, what you can take advantage of right now, and even get a little preview of what might be coming in the summer and fall. So that webinar is actually live to register right now if you go to mapbox.com/webinars.